Day 827 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at the Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 507,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional above average 1,390 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 18 tanks, 22 APVs, and 39 artillery. And with so much happening in the last day, we'll head across to the map now into a little known area of the Kerch Strait on the edge of the Russian Krasnodar region, as overnight strikes by Ukrainian Neptune missiles hit the ferry crossing and the oil terminal of the port of Kavkaz, which of course is somewhat unprecedented for a Ukrainian-developed missile to extend so far into Russian territory with such an impact. Because the last known notable use of the Ukrainian missile, the Neptune missile, was from the sinking of the Russian Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, back around the commencement of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which is, in fact, still indicated as an icon on this very map. And so for this latest news, it's not always so for the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense to come out and state so unequivocally that A, they caused the incident, and B, this was the type of weapon they used, whether it be an ATACMS, Neptune missile now, or anything else. So this port's infrastructure is, or was, crucial for Russia's logistics and army supply lines. And according to a Russian Telegram channel, the fire erupted in a fuel depot housing 3 petroleum tanks that supplied gas to Russian forces in the occupied Kherson and Zaporizhia oblasts. And yet all of this comes as just yesterday, Ukrainian Magura V5 naval drones destroyed and damaged a Russian patrol boat or boats in occupied Crimea. And on top of that, as we already know, US-provided ATACMS missiles hit the Russian Kerch ferry crossing and 2 ferries, which sustained substantial damage. Also, for a brief mention in the mix here, those Magura V5s targeted and destroyed 2 Russian KS-701 Tenets boats, which are high-speed amphibious transports, which were struck in the Vuzka Bay. These vessels are typically used for logistics and patrol by Russian forces, but also known to be named Putin's boats or oligarch boats, as these are the type that they are usually seen traveling on. And despite the chaotic fire from small arms and 30mm cannons, these Ukrainian naval drones successfully completed their mission. But it doesn't stop there, because in the early hours of the morning, a dramatic drone attack targeted a Russian oil depot and seaport in Taman, not far away from Kazkam, situated near the Kerch Bridge, but on the Russian side as well. The attack reportedly caused significant damage to the infrastructure critical for the region's energy and logistical operations. So in all, these series of incidents underscores the intensifying nature of the conflict and the strategic importance of disrupting supply lines and key assets. Then also, not too far away, there was also a series of loud explosions heard overnight in Novorossiysk, likely due to air defenses from more UAV drone raids onto what is probably now largely considered the new headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, as the former closer proximity of the original Russian naval HQ in Sevastopol just being far too close to Ukraine, thus being much too risky to remain positioned at. Then, moving along on the map, and as far as the Russian map is concerned, far, far away in Siberia, and I really have to stretch out and see if I can find this one, as in a dramatic turn of events, reports from Russian media have surfaced indicating that one of the buildings in President Vladimir Putin's residence in Altai has been almost completely destroyed by a fire. Now, this incident has sparked intense speculation and curiosity, especially due to rumors suggesting that a bunker, potentially serving as a secure hideaway for Putin, lies beneath this very residence. And just looking at it, you might think that this place isn't much of a palace, but it's probably very nice in comparison to almost any other place in Siberia. And I and others would probably speculate that it was potentially one of Putin's contingency plans for a safe haven in the event that things got really out of hand. One less contingency for Putin. Now, as for how this fire occurred, well, at a distance of 3,000 kilometers, or as the crow flies, about 1,800 miles, it certainly wasn't as a direct result of Ukrainian fire, but instead was possibly more work from partisan activity who were able to gain access to the far less secure location. Then moving back to the main map, to the Ukrainian map, or really just a smidge beyond it, as it was noticed that Russian S-300 and S-400 air defense batteries were located in a few steps further from the Ukrainian state border, about 155 kilometers from the front lines, or almost exactly 100 miles, near Kamensk-Sektinsky. And you might remember the area as a chemical plant was targeted and damaged by drone strikes about a month ago. It's also a location that hosts several important military assets and is a staging area for the movement of military equipment and weapons. So it's no wonder that there is such an accumulation of air defense assets in this region. Now, this satellite imagery you see here was just released more recently, but the photos of the site were taken some days earlier. And I know what you're thinking, and it must be mentioned, to have such an accumulation of air defenses so close together is quite risky for Russia to do so. And I suspect the only thing saving these systems so far has been the fact that it's been in proper Russian territory. But the tide is already turning, with a partial NATO acceptance already for using NATO-supplied weapons on key military sites within Russia. Then moving along the map and really trying to crawl my way back into the Ukrainian map today. And so we'll start out in the northeast, as in a recent statement, Alexander Syrsky, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, highlighted the ongoing buildup of Russian troops in the Kharkiv direction. Despite this increased military presence, Syrsky emphasized that the amassed forces are insufficient to launch a full-scale offensive or to break through Ukrainian defenses. So this deployment underscores the persistent tension and strategic maneuvers in the region, as both sides continue to prepare for potential escalations while maintaining a strong defensive posture. And so it's locations just like this on the map that have brought renewed attention to the usage of NATO-supplied weapons into Russian territory, as most sections on the map don't contain a front line that, by its very nature, starts to encroach upon actual Russian territory. And because of it, thereby reinvigorating the conversation about the use of, say, HIMARS or Storm Shadows or various other, say, aviation-launched glide drop munitions onto Russian lands. Now, Russia calls this an escalation, but of course, we've seen Russia themselves use a few North Korean missiles and also plenty of Iranian drones on Ukrainian territory. And truly, they would use anything else they could get their hands on, if they could. But any sovereign nation deserves the right to protect itself, particularly as it pertains to border conflict zones. So specifically, what I think we're going to see here soon is, for example, the US, French, or UK glide munitions perform precision strike munitions, or I should say the usage of them, and send them just over the border on very, very key specific military assets that everybody could agree is fair game. Be it ammo dumps, troop accumulations, military logistic points, or so on. Because it just doesn't make any sense at all that Russia can hit Ukraine in this way, just beyond the border, but Ukraine cannot hit Russia. And yes, the key difference, you might say, could be the fact that they're NATO-supplied weapons, hence my reason for mentioning the Iran and North Korean weapons used. So I suspect that the Ukrainian military tactics will be stepped up from there, so as to not seem so escalatory. And I don't actually even mean escalatory from a Russian perspective, but a more perceived Western escalatory nature. So it's all about the incremental changes to tactics on the map, like a frog in hot water, where a frog is placed in cool water that is then slowly heated, and the frog won't perceive the gradual change in temperature and will eventually be cooked alive. Then, headed down further on the map, we saw some small incremental gains by the Russian forces in or just beyond the Netelova settlement. Gotta find that one there. It hasn't been that active for a while, as there appears to be a number of new push attempts along the Eastern Front for a number of days now. Oh, then looking around on the map, because then in a quick update on the Luhansk strike on the 28th that you might remember, as new high-res satellite imagery now shows the field was completely laid waste to by ATACMS missiles, and it did in fact include the Nebo-M radar destroyed, among other components. And with a long-range multi-band operation radar of this magnitude, the Nebo-M is critical for Russia's army when it comes to aerial threat detection and elimination, or was critical. Then looking around the map, because somewhere in the east, we saw the destruction of a Russian T-80 BVM tank. Now this is the 22 variant, 2022, and is sometimes what I will refer to as some of the best tanks that Russia has. Then also, somewhere in the east, I believe the Kharkiv region, we saw the destroyed Russian Strela 10 system, which is a highly mobile, short-range surface-to-air missile system. And with a range of just a few miles, it has to move all the way up in there to the front lines to become effective, but also easily spotted. Then moving along, because we also saw some interesting footage of a Ukrainian drone operator catching up with a Russian reconnaissance fixed-wing type UAV, the Russian Zala drone, where the operator reported engagement and likely destruction of the Russian drone. And I say likely because the problem we have here is we can never see the final outcome for these very specific types of events, because it's not a team effort of a recon drone, a targeting drone like this one. Instead, it's just an in-flight single drone that happens to stumble upon a Russian drone in the airways. And so the Ukrainian drone gets the chance to destroy the enemy drone, so it invariably leads to the destruction of the AFU drone as well. Then headed across to some news for today. So Germany has announced a substantial new military aid package worth 500 million euros to Ukraine, as revealed by Germany's Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius, during a surprise visit to the country. So this significant aid package includes a variety of military equipment aimed at bolstering Ukraine's defensive capabilities, with the package notably featuring a very large number of IRST missiles, both standard and long range, quite a few more long range in fact in this case. Additionally, it includes reconnaissance drones designed for operations in the Black Sea. Plus on top of that, various spare parts such as barrels for the PZH-2000 howitzers and engines for the Leopard 2 main battle tanks. Then as for a partial update, as we continue to get more news about the Czech-led artillery shell initiative, where the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic announced that Ukraine will receive tens of thousands of projectiles every month as part of the Czech initiative. Now there was frustrating delays with getting these shells in, not the least of which, of course, was the startup costs. So getting the funds commitment from a large number of nations. But also, and sometimes I just have to concede when some bad stuff goes down, some of the actual shells themselves were of low quality. But having said that, there is still a massive chunk of good quality shells ready to send to Ukraine, obviously, as per the previous news mention. And probably, based on the way the PM spoke about it, en route to Ukraine as we speak. Then moving along and taking a quick look at a Ukrainian hardware update, but from a Russian perspective, as most recently Russian state media TV showed the range of the Swedish ASC-890 long-range radar surveillance aircraft coming to Ukraine soon. With its 360-degree radar capabilities that allows it to detect and track targets at greater distances than ground-based radars, and capable of detecting and tracking both aerial and maritime targets, making it versatile for various mission profiles. All that can serve as a command and control center, coordinating operations and providing real-time data to friendly forces via secure data links. But then also, Russia RT News put on display a various assortment of various missiles, UAVs, and other weapons platforms that have been provided to Ukraine and the range for which each is capable of projecting out to. So from Kyiv in 3 days to precision strike capabilities on Russian lands. Then to some Russian hardware related news with some footage I've wanted to show you for a couple of weeks now. As after a morning drone raid from Ukraine into Russia's Novorossiysk region, you might remember the one that's presumably now the Russian Black Sea Fleet HQ, we saw the insane amount of indiscriminate fire that was caused by many very small caliber firing off shots in an attempt to suppress the UAV incursion. With the footage showing the air defense crew somewhat impressed with taking down one UAV drone. And I've never seen anything so careless. Those small projectiles could be going anywhere. And anywhere they did go, with later reports of multiple windows hit and even a destroyed engine from a car. That's right, this Kia was KIA. Then in some more news, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently told a state media outlet, RIA Novosti, that the Kremlin remains open to negotiations, but emphasized the need to consider the, quote, realities on the ground, showing that Russia seeks to keep the occupied Ukrainian territories as a precondition for peace. This stance, needless to say, has been unacceptable to Kyiv since the outset of Moscow's full-scale invasion, and oddly enough, Lavrov reiterated Moscow's justification that it invaded Ukraine to ensure its own security. Boggles the mind. This just makes no sense, and continues to make no sense. In fact, Russia has never been less secure in the 21st century now. And in stark contrast, Kyiv and the Western allies have maintained that peace is only achievable if Moscow withdraws its troops and restores Ukraine's internationally recognized borders to their status before the invasion. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off today, guys. So with this one, as Putin was recently at one of his publicly aired foreign affairs or security council meetings, telling everybody that they must work as if they are on the front lines. Which means he's talking about a fully mobilized war economy without actually mandating it as so, which would otherwise be an extremely unpopular political decree and series of legislative actions. So he goes on to say that everyone must feel as if they're mobilized. But the real kicker here is his use of language on how he tries to rope everybody else into his very own choice of single-handedly involving his entire country in his botched invasion of Ukraine. As he states, quote, "Only this way will we achieve the goals we have set out for ourselves." Oh, please. Yep, some real 1944 vibes going on right there, folks. So thanks again for watching, guys, and once again, I always do appreciate the likes, the comments, and the subscribing of the YouTube channel. Anything else is a bonus, which actually really helps this channel going, so I appreciate all of that support there as well, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!